guys, and welcome to my podcast for English 3. Currently, I am going to cover 4 of the American literature periods and give you an explanation on how their education was and my opinions on it now. So first we have the Native American literary era, where we had to read The Earth on a Turtle's Back, which is a little folklore story where there was nothing but water at first, and then there was this god and goddess had a kid, and the goddess planted a tree when she wasn't supposed to, which ended up making land on Earth. And I put that with education because of cultural diversity, which is related to that, because back then their education for the kids was like showing them how to hunt and gather, and they believed like more of water was a main resource. Along with that, normally kids could be taught visually, auditory, but some kids were blind back then, so they had to use their hands. But my opinion on their education, I have nothing really bad to say about it because, it's really relatable and it's kind of a good start. And now for the next period, it is colonial, which for the colonial period, let me bring it up. Mainly their way of education, like teaching kids. Normally it was just the boys that got to go to school, but a few privileged girls got a chance. Our reading for the colonial period was The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, which is, our version was a 14-chapter book where a main character is accused of adultery, and she has to wear this letter A, and she's judged by a lot of people because she came out of jail holding a baby, which later on in the book, if you ever read it, you'll kind of see why. But, only boys, like I said earlier, only boys and a few privileged girls were able to learn. This is why people say men were more educated back then, and because education was mainly targeted towards males. Revolutionary period is coming up next. My favorite one. Education in the Revolutionary period. After the Revolutionary War, there were many new ways of education that were more accurate and respectful, and also opened doors for more females to be involved in and learn, like the boys were. We had a reading that our teacher gave us called Give Me Liberty, Give Me Death, which is basically like during a time where the British were like controlling the people, the colonists. The guy who wrote Give Me Liberty, Give Me Death was really patriotic, and he didn't really approve of how he had to be controlled. So basically the main name Give Me Liberty, Give Me Death kind of goes along with what he wrote, because either he wanted to be free, or that if the British were still going to be there, he wanted to die, basically. And then I had to choose another reading, so I chose Paul Revere's Ride by Henry W. Longfellow. It's a good poem, and I thought it would be really well for this because of Paul Revere, like the British are coming in the Revolutionary War time. And the first part of it goes like, Listen, my children, and you shall bear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive. Who remembers that famous day and year? I just thought, because I had to read this poem in middle school, and I thought it would be like really good for this, because it's basically kind of like a warning, and some people common sense isn't so common nowadays. I hate to say it, but that's true. So I take that as like a warning for them. On to the last part of this little episode. We're going to Romanticism. There weren't really any real curriculums. It was just mainly like focused on beliefs and intuition and stuff. There's 4 parts of Romanticism: fireside chat poets, dark romantics, early romantics, and transcendentalism. For dark romantics, we read Edgar Allan Poe's The Masque of Red Death, which is very scandalous and has a kind of a scary tone to it. I'd suggest that you read it because it was really fun, though. Then the fireside chat poets, I did a little bit of research, and it says that they opposed slavery and many other terrible things during that time, but their education was a little bit different due to their ideas and the timing, what was going on. Early Romantics education, the left mainly had their focus on race, gender, and class, while the right side of it had their focus mainly on helping kids to do better than they were already doing and encouraging them to go ahead and be themselves. Transcendentalism is where transcendentalists believed the education of the child's mind, heart, soul, and body were made to be put forth for the child to set their own goals and them to achieve them. Since this is kind of a short little recording, I think I might as well just go ahead and finish it, like with all the eras. My summary for Romanticism is Romanticism has 4 main parts and a lot of authors. It was very interesting in that the 4 main parts were fireside chat poets, early Romantics, dark Romantics, and the Transcendentalists. I really wouldn't change their education due to their ways of beliefs and how well the kids were taught back then. But since I said I'm going to go ahead, let's go ahead and go to realism. Realism, the kids' education was very different than Romanticism. Because Romanticism was like supernatural and like ghosts and stuff and certain like focused beliefs, creativity. While instead, and I put in here, instead of the beliefs of the supernatural, the beliefs of logic, critical thinking, and the scientific method to understand reality was mainly the education for realism. We had 4 different people that our teacher gave us to go over, like, with the thing. Those people were Abraham Lincoln, Emily Dickinson, Mark Twain, and Sojourner Truth. The pieces that I had were we had to do Ain't I a Woman by Sojourner Truth. Everyone had to do that. Then I chose Success is Counted Sweetest by Emily Dickinson. Then Honored of a Curiosity by Mark Twain. And Abraham Lincoln's First Political Announcement. I really wouldn't change their ways of education back then due to like how the poetry like help people express themselves in a very like cool way. And their education kind of made more sense. Like it was more open for people, like with the revolutionary time. So let's go ahead and go on to naturalism. Now, I really couldn't find a reading for naturalism, but our teacher said we could also do a definition. So I stated during naturalism, the education was basically following nature and human development. People were talking about how children should be in nature and learn more things from nature, basically to survive. And I said naturalism was and is still to this day kind of hard to understand. Some people believe that it's trees, which that really makes no sense, but nature, I understand that. While others believe that it's how people bond with nature. My summary is naturalism is a belief with multiple points. It is also within the study of children, and naturalism has many different meanings, but education meaning was listed above. Basically like kids and nature and stuff. Let's go ahead to modernism, which has my 2 favorite things, the Harlem Renaissance and the Southern Renaissance. For the Harlem Renaissance, segregation was mostly, in during that time, and that makes me really sad. And people wanted equal rights for everyone, which started and led to protests in the streets about equality and many other things. The education rate is also very harsh because the black children didn't really get to learn as much as the white children, which is really not right. I did Gwendolyn B. Bennett's Nocturne 1923 poem. This cool night is strange, among the midsummer days, far frosts are caught in the moon's pale light, and the sounds of distant laughter chilled to crystal tears. It doesn't really rhyme, but I thought it would be a good idea. Then for the Southern Renaissance, we have William Faulkner. During Southern Renaissance, there were a few main authors that came into play, especially my favorite one, William Faulkner. He's one of the main authors who rose up during that time. The summary for Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance happened during segregation, which was separation of white people and black people. It was also when a lot of people made jazz music. Louis Armstrong was one of the best jazz artists of that time, and people still love his music to this day. And like I said, my person from the Harlem Renaissance was Gwendolyn B. Bennett, and I chose her poem Nocturne from 1923. When I actually sat down and read it, I kind of felt like what she was trying to say, but it left me, and I think she's basically just saying it's strange to have a cooler night, or because normally back then it was really hot at night, but I think it's also a poem or something like that she wrote about laughter and stuff. The summary of the Southern Renaissance was mainly started with William Faulkner, who was one of the best authors to exist, which is actually legit. William Faulkner wrote many books and some poems. I put the book Uncollected Stories of William Faulkner, a picture of it in here, which is edited by Joseph Blattner. So now, that was modernism, on to postmodernism, which is basically today. Summary for that was, for education in our period, the teaching styles were helping kids with understanding more critical and clear thoughts of thinking. Their production of knowledge, development of individual and social identity, along with self-creation. Basically, the teachers led students to learn and see new things and how to be themselves. Then, in 2020, December 2019, COVID arose in China. And then it got spread all the way over here to the U.S., so we had to shut down everything. Schools were shut down. We had to go remote, which basically means virtual, you join a Google Meet. And a lot of people had a lot of issues with that. But COVID was really deadly, in 2020, especially in the U.S. when it shut down in March, because a lot of people didn't know what to do and they kept going out, which wasn't very smart. But I'm glad that they shut down the schools and made the kids go virtual so they wouldn't get really sick. I put that I wouldn't change that way of teaching since everyone is used to it, but before COVID-19, schools were doing 5 days a week. Now, due to COVID-19, we're only doing 4 days a week of virtual. I'd rather stick with 4 days a week, because Wednesday we get a break to study, do some work and stuff, which is very effective with some students because they can email their teachers and get help like normal. Anyways, I know this podcast is a little bit long, but this is my first attempt at it, and you know what? I like this project. And all the research that was done was really fun. Oh wait, I forgot a slide. Let's see what that one says. My opinions on education now, pre-COVID to now. My opinions are very mixed match about all these types of education. My main opinion on the education that we have now is that everything is basically offset. It's kind of feels different. COVID-19 made education very difficult for all of us because we had to be remote and a lot of kids do better in person. My opinion on the Native American literature is that it helps me to understand how the Native Americans helped their kids and how they hunted, which was actually very cool because the kids could actually fiddle with things, when you do an experiment in science. But on a few of the eras, I didn't agree with their ways at all, because the colonial one, where mostly boys and men were able to learn, but only a few privileged girls. There weren't really a lot of privileged girls back then, so they didn't really get the education that they needed. But other than that, I hope y'all have a blessed day. Thank you so, so much for listening. And wait, I forgot something. I know. Shocker. Each of the 7 literary periods with education standards, with the 4 major themes of American literature. Let's see them. American individualism, as a little reminder. American individualism is a self-made man, the celebration of ambition and achievements, while cultural diversity welcomes legal immigrants of many different backgrounds. There's 2 theories. The melting pot theory, which the melting pot theory is basically where immigrants assimilate into our culture and become Americans, while the salad bowl theory, immigrants retain separate identities. So I want to see what they are. The American dream was closely linked to American individualism. The American dream is the idea that anyone can become whatever he, she, or they want to be by working very hard, having great determination, and great perseverance. And then we have tolerance, which is the acceptance of religion, sexuality, gender, race, etc. Now I'm finished. You guys have a blessed day, and I will Film later. Goodbye.